Hello, I hope you're golden. Welcome to another episode of Space by Stansons, hosted by me, Guy Stanley. This episode, I'm chatting to Kayleigh Nobbs, Head of Design at Ambit, who are part of the Workspace Futures Group and a main contractor delivering fit-out, refurbishment and technical installations. I'm quite excited about this chat because it gets to the other side of the project when it's on site and I hear about the nitty-gritty of what actually happens. Welcome, Kayleigh.
Thank you. We're here.
Yes,
Ready?
we are.
Yeah, a bit of a different conversation today, I guess. Getting down to a bit of the nitty-gritty of, we're on site, we're building it, we're making it happen, like you say. So, yeah, ready to delve in.
Brilliant. So kicking off, it's always nice to know a bit about you, like how your career started. So can you fill us in?
Yeah, I went to Nottingham Trent University for interior architecture and design. So it's actually, at the time, it was quite a new course. It was kind of bridging that gap between architecture and interior design. We're not just about the soft furnishings, we're not just about the structural elements. So it's something that the industry really needs, and that role actually is exactly what design and build is. We're taking potentially a concept, or we're taking the design from the off and then actually making it happen, working out the technical details, looking at the site. So that was where I kind of started, and during that time I got to do a placement year with an architecture company, and that really kind of solidified it for me, what I wanted to look at and what I wanted to what my next step in the career would be once I got out of university. So I actually had so many different experiences, from architecture side to complete concept design, where you're literally thinking of the most magical things that actually may or may not happen. But yeah, what I found was a lot of the kind of time I spent on those areas, the projects took too long to actually get to site. Or architecture side, you can be working on something for 6 years, and that's when you finally get kind of the satisfaction of walking around the space. So moving into the construction side and being part of a principal contractor, everything's very quick. A lot of the time our projects are 16 weeks long from start to finish. That includes design process. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, that's something that we find is quite satisfying. You get to do that whole process with the client, with an architect, with our subcontractors, and then really understand the project and get to hand it over and see people experience it.
Yeah, interesting. And sorry if I'm an idiot question, but you talk about design from contractor side. How is that different to traditional design or the design side on design and build? What does it involve?
Well, we have quite a few different projects at Ambit. So we don't have a key specific area we look at. We can work either from stage 0 with the complete strategy and concept of the design that our client will want to look at, or we can work from stage 3 or 4, for example, where the concept's already implemented by an architect or a designer, and we take it on from that stage and actually develop it to work with the site that's there. So in that sense, it's taking a concept that is very lovely, but how does it work in reality? So it's adapting the technical detailing and really surveying what's on site, because sometimes the architect hasn't had the opportunity to actually get on site once areas have been demolished or opened up. So I think that's kind of like the complicated side to being in design on contractor side. It's really kind of, there's a lot of spot the difference. There's a lot of regulatory things that you obviously, at the end of the day, we have to make sure we're abiding by all of the regulations. We're the ones that are making the space, and it needs to be accessible. It needs to work for the client, work for the end user. and we need it signed off essentially. Otherwise, no one can use it. So it's our job to really make sure that if there is a concept already, that it can be translated into reality.
Yeah.
That's the key area that we kind of focus on.
It's interesting about the spot the difference.
The spot the difference is so true, because we know, I mean, like I've said, I've worked architecture side as well, and we know that the deadlines that are in the industry at the moment, the pace that everyone has to work at, that's one challenging aspect. And then the accessibility to these sites. At some of these points, it's actually just it's a pie in the sky sort of thing that we're just thinking about. So we have to really look at the drawings and analyse them and say, that's not actually what's in reality. How do we adapt the design to actually make the concept still look like what the client signed up for? But also, what details do we need to adapt to make it work in the space itself?
Yeah, interesting. And I actually do want to pick up about pace because I think that's really important, but I'm going to hold the thought if I can pin it. But I want to just go back to your education, because you obviously studied interior architecture, which is really interesting. Now, do you still use what you learn and apply that every day, or is the real world so different it's kind of irrelevant?
I think it's a really good question, because what you learn at university is very specific, and it's ultimately ruled by the tutors you have. And that means everyone's experience can be completely different. And I find that, certain elements like software that you're using, if you've developed that at university, that's something we use day to day to actually create the work we do. But kind of the daily runnings of the industry, that's what I really understood when I went on a placement year with university. That's what kind of set that course apart from others for me. I wanted to get that experience of real life industry. So that's what I would 100% recommend to anyone that's looking to do any course of any kind, really. If they can make it a placement year, that you can go out and actually learn on the job before finishing at university. It's going to give you a head start in the industry in general anyway, because you've shown that you've got some experience, and it will really help you actually understand how to go into your final year and what you should be picking up on. There's so many details in day-to-day projects that aren't picked up in just general learning when you're sitting at a desk.
What like?
Well, I mean, you can, for example, you can do a full project and you can have your tutor put a comment on it. But ultimately, I've got 5 clients a lot of the time as one client. You've got to sell your concept to 5 people. It's not one person that gives the end sign off on it. And that's quite a hard thing to actually deal with as an individual. And then also how you interact with people you're actually working with. Again, a lot of the stuff that we're doing in our education at the moment still focuses on you're learning as one individual. You're getting a grade at the end of it as one individual. But in reality, there's a full team around you. You're not just working as a designer. You're working with a commercial manager. You're working with a project manager. There's MEP side. Everything integrates, and if we don't start integrating kind of that learning at a university level, there's never going to be a full understanding, and then we're relearning when we get into the workplace. So that's why one of the first things that we do is try and make sure anyone that's, whether they're a graduate coming out of uni or they're just joining our company from the office, we make sure that everyone has an understanding of everyone's roles, because ultimately we're one team working towards the same goal.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's a really good share. So thank you. And now you're at Ambit. You've like zoomed through your career, like the whole like I don't really like hierarchy, but like the whole job role ladder and everything. So that's really exciting. What is it like now you're in your role, contractor, kind of site based, and being a young woman?
I think it's quite a tricky question.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's a good question. I think like a lot of people obviously, obviously it's a big topic. Ultimately, it is a very male dominated industry still, which is completely fair. There's no issues with that. I think the thing is everyone's got to be confident in themselves, and we can only build each other up for that. And by doing that, it's with your team having that experience on site. If you're a junior in whatever role you're in, and you don't go to site as much, there's going to be some sort of anticipation for that. So we make sure that everyone's on site for the projects they work on. We spend at least a day there so that we can really get integrated into what's happening. And again, it's that understanding of, well, in theory, we've talked about it in drawings or what it could be. But in reality, what is happening in the ceiling? What is going into that build-up of the wall? So that's really something that we try and build upon, especially with our juniors in our teams, to make sure that everyone gets as much experience on site as possible. But overall, for women in construction, it is a minority overall. I know that there is still issues in the industry for how potentially some women are treated. I think it's something that we can only combat within our own teams as such. If it's not widely spoken about, then it's going to become an issue. We need to make sure everyone's aware. And again, it's not just, we're not having these talks as women in construction. Me and you are sitting here talking about it. It needs to be a bigger discussion.
Yeah.
Men are the whole reason we're talking about this is for that decide that something was wrong.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about it, men and women together. It shouldn't be an issue in 2024.
No, I couldn't wholeheartedly agree more. And I think everybody needs to talk about it. I agree with you, but I do actually think it's more of a responsibility for men to talk about.
Yeah.
Because women can sit there and say what they want, which is all good, but kind of they are just playing the victim if you're not. It can come across like that anyway. Yeah. And I think it's for the men to stand up and to speak out and to say things in that scenario. Until we're the cause of the problem, so we need to be the voice for the solution. I do definitely think the responsibility is definitely much more on men. Is it something that you're still finding an issue? Or don't you want to answer that?
I mean, I personally haven't had a bad experience. I'm a very strong-willed person and will tell you exactly what I think. Yeah. But I can understand how potentially someone that is very new in the industry or is a bit more timid may feel like a certain way when they are on site. Essentially, we go back to the analogy of being wolf whistled down the street by a builder. It's not something you want at all. But the issue is there's kind of a mindset that is kind of what has happened in the past. And do you have that sort of anxiety entering a building site, essentially? Because we know that has happened in the past. I mean, there is absolutely no tolerance for it in any of our sites. And it doesn't stem down just to women on site. It's everyone's behaviour is called upon, and you won't work with us if there's any issues or any known issues. So that is something that we've got no tolerance for. It should just be a standard.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. You've had quite a raft of experience. I love it. Kayleigh, I love the all the different dynamics and everything like that, which is great. What's one mistake you've made that you don't want anyone else to make as a woman in construction?
I think that one of the key things is to really not sit in something that's comfortable for you. So I've had great experiences at everywhere I've worked, in terms of I've kind of put myself out there in the end of trying different things.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if you're in the same place for too long, or you don't push yourself into different aspects of your work, you're going to become a bit stagnant. And I think that a lot of people at the start of their career may kind of just go with the flow, because they don't think that they can ask for something, or they don't think they can essentially demand some more training in a certain aspect. And I think people just need to make sure that they push themselves to really ask for what they want. Essentially, as a manager now, I want whoever's working with me to develop their own career, and if they want to specialise in something, great. If they want to just be an all-rounder overall and just have their hands in every part of the design elements,
Mm-hmm.
again, great. I think overall the mistake would be that you just go with the flow too much and let things pass you by. I think that is something that a lot of us can probably admit to doing, being comfortable. Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, it's easy, isn't it, to get into a comfort zone and just kind of enjoy it, but to keep pushing those boundaries.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm quite interested in from your angle, construction side, is planet and how we actually are sustainable.
Yeah.
Because often have conversations specification end, like what materials are going in and all of this good stuff, but actually delivering the thing, I think, is like a totally different.
It's a much wider span, much bigger conversation overall. But yeah, it's when you start delving into it, it is, like you say, a big black hole of, oh my God, how do we do this? What do we do here? What do we focus on? I mean, we actually have our own head of sustainability. That is Matt Robinson. He's amazing. He's just heading up everything to do with how we can be more sustainable as a company. And he actually helped our whole group, Workplace Futures, to get to a B Corp level.
Congratulations to him. Shout out to Matt.
But really, being a B Corp company, it means that we've had to really address what our values are towards sustainability, and how do we, as an ongoing thing, contribute or be better towards so many areas of day to day, and that doesn't just include our HQ office. It includes everyone on site, how we even get to work. All of this data is collected so that we can really understand what our contribution is. So as Ambit ourselves, for every project we do a carbon assessment, we track our waste as well. So we use QFlow and Encore to help track our waste, so we know, for example, we know where every delivery is coming from, we know how far that's travelled, how it's travelled, and then once we've got it there, what's the packaging on it, what's happening to that packaging. All right, well, on our sites it's going into a bin. Where's that bin going? It's getting recycled. It's what is happening to it. So we get all of that data collected so that we can really understand what our impact is. And then also between us, we're trying to think of kind of some innovative ways where we can do a bit better in terms of, okay, it's not just it's coming to us and it's going back out again. Where can we actually utilise some of these elements in our sites? For example, we can either use pallets that we had delivered. Can we use that as something like some quirky furniture that we make as our kind of breakout on site? Or, you know, different things that it's very site specific for us, but it's something that actually we all enjoy trying to think of things like that. But also some different areas where we can kind of, anything that's being demolished, can we actually reuse it? Is it actually need to leave this site, or can it be reused on site in a different way? Can it be donated somewhere else? So I think there's like a much bigger question. That's literally just waste. That's just what we're talking about in terms of waste. But like everything we track so that we can get a better understanding of what our impact is.
Firstly, Matthew, you sound a very busy man. Hats off. And to all that Ambit, I think that's amazing. So yeah, congratulations. Kind of actually brings me back, as you were saying earlier, about time. Because all of this literally sounds like a time black hole.
Yeah.
And is there enough understanding of that?
No. The simple answer is no. Time, everyone wants everything as soon as possible. Every email you get will be ASAP, and we need to act on this now. And the reality of it is anything that has some meaning behind it, we need the time to actually process how that will work, how it will work with the program we've got to work with as well. It's not just down to one sole entity that's doing this any elements. You know, we work with partners, like I said, Encore, for example, but also it's having like the understanding. All of this is very new for everyone. Like we're all developing different sustainability elements, so really we're all learning as we go. And I think we just all need to remember that if we want to get the best outcome, we really need to put the time and energy into the research behind it, the understanding. And that's not just down to your sustainability person, your sustainability champion. That's down to everyone in the team.
Yeah.
If I don't understand how that works in terms of reuse, I can't implement that into the design. Cost side can't understand the saving that may be offered to the client because we're reusing, and different areas. So everyone needs to actually really delve into it. Yeah.
It also takes a lot of creativity, doesn't it? I mean, you mentioned a small thing about like the pallets, but extrapolate that out to bigger, to like knocking down walls and what's happening with that waste and can we reuse it? It actually takes a really creative approach, and it's not something you just click your fingers and it's done.
Yeah.
It's every project, every site, every bit of waste has got to have thought into it.
Definitely. And you've got to really have a forward-thinking client as well, because reuse is so determined by what is there, and sometimes you don't even know what that is. We may take down a plasterboard wall and you see a full lovely brick wall behind, and the whole design might change because we should encapsulate that as part of the feature. But in terms of understanding, you know, how much actually goes into these reuse elements, the client's really got to be able to visualize something that we can't even show them. It's essentially an idea, and we could do this. Until we actually get there and test it, we don't actually know the reality of it a lot of the time. But we want to work better at, we will have to bring the clients along for the ride for these. And luckily we work with a lot of clients that are really forward thinking, especially for sustainability. So they really want to actually delve into this with us. And they want that story behind the project that they're working on as well. Yeah. We're actually working on something in Farringdon at the moment, where we've had to remove all of the windows in the building. We want to up the EPC rating, so that was part of that. Now we looked at, okay, where is this going? Where is all this glass going? Okay, what could we do better here? So we're working with a company to actually reuse that glass, and it's going to be used as all of the worktops in the space. So we're getting it ground up and reformed into the worktops. So that's not only great for the fact that it's not having to travel far, it's not going to have to go into landfill, it's not going to have to go to a kind of another party to try and do something with it. We're literally keeping it with one supplier, we're remaking it into the solid surface, and it's going to be a great thing that we can connect back from the building back into the building.
That is literally magical. If only, like, I'm just sitting there just like shivers. Like, if only everyone was doing that on every project, and I know it's hard. I know, like, not everyone can do it on every project on every material, but how great, like, that is starting to happen.
Yeah.
How do you now weave that story in? So when when your clients' team or visitors or stakeholders, shareholders, anything come in, that they know that was the old glass from the windows?
So there's so many different parties that are actually involved in a project. I mean, a lot of people think, obviously, you've got your client, your designer, and your builder, essentially, and it's done. But at the end of
simple,
it's so easy. Not all the consultants that go along with it, or any sign-offs you need, but ultimately someone's selling this space to someone we don't know. So we always have any letting agents come along whilst we're building. We show them the tours of the space as we're doing it. That really gets them to have an understanding of what's going into the space, kind of where we've come from, what's going into it, and the reasonings we're doing it. Because that just gives them a better understanding to be able to then explain it to the next person. Because otherwise we're just doing whispers along the line, and the story's not actually getting out there. The other thing that we're looking at doing is, because we are putting more and more sustainable elements into it, you don't always have that kind of understanding of, okay, we've got an acoustic panel, and an end tenant might go, okay, we've got an acoustic panel, great. Well, actually, what's it made out of? It's actually this much recycled PET. So because there are so many elements going in, we're working with some of the letting agents on a strategy that, as they're showing people around, how can they find that out for themselves? So whether that is a simple QR code on a couple of the items on like a marketing floor, that they can themselves go on and then find out more information about that product on their phones, and they can take that away and go, oh, I'm actually understanding what's going into this building. But really it is down to how we market them spaces. We want to make sure that all this good work is really understood so that it can be passed on.
Yeah, I think it's important, and we often get caught in the trap that it's to sell a space or to generate revenue, which Which, fine, I do get it. People have got targets to meet.
Yeah.
I'm not blind. But I also think sharing that story is so inspirational that it will drive change. So more people will think, oh, I could do that. Like that idea, I'm straight away thinking about something in a project that I'm on.
Yeah.
Where I'm trying to eliminate the waste, and I'm like, that's a nice idea. And without that share, I might have thought it's not possible and just kind of dropped the ball on it.
Yeah.
So it's actually about inspiring change and then the planet becoming a healthier, happy place because of that. It's not just revenue.
Yeah, I think we just all need to question a little bit more. We can say that is that, but realistically, because we see so many designs that come in at stage 3 to us, they've done the perfect design, which is amazing. And sometimes we turn up on site and we go, okay, we've got the whole ceiling's down to be stripped out. Well, it's going back in at the same height, in the same material. So why are we stripping the whole ceiling out? Because in our heads, all that plaster, we're seeing it. That's the issue. Day to day, we see it. So we're really having to address it.
You see the physical.
We see the physical.
Waste.
Exactly. So we address these things right there and then. And then again, we have to bring the architect or the client along for the ride for that, because ultimately it's their decision. If they do want a brand new plasterboard ceiling that's going in at the exact same height as the existing plasterboard ceiling, that is what they want. But it's for us to try and help educate on what are the alternatives, or did you know this was actually the case? Because we can do better for the environment. And realistically, at the end of the day, I don't think you want to pay for brand new ceiling that's the same ceiling, essentially.
Yeah.
I think people really need to recognise that there's so much adaptation that we can do on site to existing materiality that it can look brand new. It can look like something completely different that works with the new concept, that we don't always need to do completely new elements.
I almost see this as a consultancy, like a build consultancy of the required new concept to the existing building and bridging those two pieces and almost helping them to shoehorn that in, and there will be changes, but to make the most out of existing whilst meeting new as close as possible.
Yeah, that's what we found is we've kind of taken on that role without even knowing it.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, so a lot of the time it's a really fine line at the moment, because as design and build or detail and build, realistically, we need to take a potential concept that it is perfect, it could work, and we can put it in straight away. But are there alternative solutions that hit different goals that you might have not even known you wanted to try and hit or didn't know you could? So it's a lot of the time we're going back to a bit of the spot the difference thing, is that okay, you've spec'd a certain acoustic panel, a certain curtain, okay, and we'll have a little look at it and go, what are you trying to aim for? We can gain the same look and feel, but we know a specification that will hit better sustainability goals, or they have a take back scheme at the end of it, different things like that. Because we are coming in a lot of the time and we do demo works, we want to make sure that architects and designers are thinking more about what happens after their design's gone. And that's a horrible thought, because you're already thinking about, oh, my design's been demolished. So we want to try and educate on products that have take back schemes or can be recycled back into the system when we go in and take it down. We want stuff to go into reuse or recycled rather than going into landfill. Everyone wants that at the end of the day. But it's how do we make that an easier process for everyone?
Yeah, I can't get it out of my head. Are you allowed to tell me the name of the company that makes the glass into worktops?
Yes.
Who is it?
It's called Dynamic Glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they actually use their own recycled glass that they partner with people on. But we actually approached them and asked them if they could use ours direct from site, and it's something that they were really happy to partner on. So it's actually kind of a test for us and test for them. But we've produced samples, had the full process happen with our client, and it looks amazing. It's gonna be finished later this year, so look out for the photos.
Yeah, look out for that.
But yeah, I think it's again, even that, it's not something that was a standard. We kind of approached them if they were open to using the glass we were providing. So I think, like we were saying, it's really questioning what's possible, and we need the time to do that.
I was just going to say, it all comes. We're saying the same thing again and again, aren't we? It's pretty. That's lovely. I wonder if there's people that do other materials. I mean, I presume they just do glass.
They just do glass, yes. But I mean, there's so many products that obviously are doing similar ideas, but for us it's what we can identify on site that's part of our project already, and where can we reduce it going straight into the bin. Whether that then gets recycled or not, we still want to reduce that kind of travel element that's also contributing to what we put into our planet. So
no, that's lovely. Sustainability is moving at a fast pace, and as we inspire people and all the rest of it, then things will continue to change. What do you think it will look like in 5 years?
That's a big question. It's really hard to say what it will actually look like in terms of sustainability. I mean, I think there's definitely going to be more regulations and legislation that's put in place. That's something that is gradually happening, but it's going to be very slow still. I think we're just going to all have to really question ourselves as individuals and as companies to really identify what we want to achieve. Again, going back to B Corp, that's something that's kind of ensures that you, one, answer those questions, and secondly, have to actually address them every year. We have to set our own goals to and achieve them to remain a B Corp company. So it kind of gives you that sense that you have to actually put your best foot forward for these things. I think the next 5 years is going to really determine what your priorities are in terms of sustainability, and sustainability itself doesn't stop with the waste that we're producing. It's everyone's got their own ESG policies now. It's not just about the environment, it's about the people, your social impact, and so on. So, I mean, we've spoken in the past about how we collaborate with different charities. That's something that we do on every project. We collaborate with a local charity. We actually use Action Funder, which is a site that identifies charities in need around your area. Essentially a Google Maps for charities, which is really great to use.
And what do they take?
So essentially it's we just kind of identify somewhere nearby. We can either obviously donate straight to them, or we look at doing volunteering with them if there's something that obviously we specialise in construction, so if there's something that we can volunteer our time towards to better their environment, then that's something we like to do. And then really it's just actually interacting with charities so that we can make sure that what their goal is kind of getting out there as well. So down to social media, sharing what we're doing with them so that their presence is known more. But realistically, we want to be doing this. And for example, another one, it doesn't have to be just down to straight up donations or like furniture donations, things like that, or our volunteering. But we also are looking at partnering with a charity near our project that they actually train homeless to become chefs, and then they have their own catering side. So any events that we put on, we're looking at whether we can partner with them so that they can provide the food for our events that we do with the group. So it's kind of, it doesn't have to be that direct. If it's something that they specialise in, we want to try and help them along the way on that. But
That's lovely.
it needs to be, the future for sustainability is bigger than what we all think as a standard sustainability.
Yeah.
It's needs to be about the people as well. We're the ones that are going to drive the change, and if we're having a good impact on other people, then that's only for the better.
Yeah, no, that's lovely to hear. I'm glad you brought that up about charities and people and supporting either people getting into sort of gainful employment or donating and helping homeless. All that. That's really powerful too, isn't it? That's almost part of. I mean, but it's, especially B Corp. That's a big part of it.
Mm.
You've mentioned waste and charities, and I can just imagine the impact that would have positively or negatively, like depending how you approach it on our community. Is there anything else that stands out from being on a building site that you can do and have a positive impact on the community?
I think mainly it's kind of education side. So we do a lot of partnerships with schools as well, just to try and kind of bring the idea of we're not just builders, we're not just the people that are close by making a lot of noise, basically. And again, with the neighbours of our projects, it's actually having a better community liaison with them. I think a lot of construction companies obviously they put scaffolding up, they're making a lot of noise at this time and so on. So for us, it's really about having that community engagement. That means that we have a connection, and we know that if they need to come and talk to us and say, we've got a really big meeting tomorrow, we need quiet hours on this time, we can accommodate that.
That's nice.
It's not something that we don't want to be a disruption, even though construction is
disruptive,
exactly. It has to be to get things done. But really, it's like connecting with people that are already nearby or in that space, and really understanding what they need whilst we're there for 16 weeks, 18 weeks. It's not a short time for the people that are around us. So we want them to be as comfortable as possible whilst we're there. And that's really key.
That's really full. And I think you're doing tons in terms of waste and education and charities, and great. But what is often forgotten about in sustainability from the site aspect?
I think the key things that maybe get missed is what we do as individuals day to day. We've still got, it's so basic, but a recycling bin for what you're using during the day for your meal deal. Where does it actually go? We all think that it's such a little part, and as an individual, how am I really helping in that sense? But it all adds up at the end of the day. Just because we're doing it on a smaller scale as an individual doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying. But in terms of sustainability and what we miss, there's so many aspects that really we don't even think about. You will obviously be susceptible to it too. All of us are. The issue is at the moment is we're surrounded by buzzwords, and we hook onto the buzzword of the time. And like at the moment, it's circular economy or net zero. And by kind of honing in on that and kind of ticking the box for that, I think a lot of companies are missing other areas where we're actually really slacking on because we're trying to hit the buzzword areas. So are we actually thinking about all these tiny little things that add up to a much larger piece when we're just trying to kind of tick a box at the moment because it deserves that for the time that we're in?
Trend.
It is a trend. Like, we'll have a different trend in a few years.
It shouldn't be a trend, though.
It shouldn't be a trend.
I'm just going to say, but yeah.
Exactly. I think the issue is we're going to have these trends as such pop up. As long as we continue with that and add to them, then fine. But if we're just all hooking onto that buzzword for now and doing what we can to showcase ourselves now and not going further and beyond, then what's the point really? Because we're just going to lose it in time. If we don't have something that's kind of holding us to what we need to do, a lot of that is legislation, regulations. Again, in terms of that, some people only do that because they have to.
Yeah.
It's the mindset that we need to change, that we should be trying to do better. It shouldn't be forced upon us.
Yeah, no, that's important. What are the gaps then? What is the stuff that, I do agree with the recycling bins. And actually, that's a simple thing. And I do agree with you. It stacks up to be big. I was with a brand the other day, Nordic Design House, and they have like really gorgeous recycling centres.
Yeah.
Like absolutely beautifully aesthetic. And you're like, oh, actually, we can now have this like on show and kind of front of mind rather than tucked away behind a cupboard.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so simple, but simple. Totally works. Is there any other cracks and gaps?
I think most of the time it's going to be probably the process that we're still doing. It's a very disjointed process across all the rebus stages. If we're going back to design side, because it all ultimately ends up on site.
Mm-hmm.
All these stages lead to someone on site making it happen. So if we can develop our process that it doesn't start with a strategist and get handed over to a designer or architect and then get handed over again, if there's a bit more continuity and everyone's involved at a bit of an earlier stage than maybe traditionally they would have been, then I think we can address a lot more early on. And that will just mean that our clients aren't on the back foot when someone further down the line brings something up. And it's just a bit more of a cohesive project at the end of the day if you work in that way. So we're actually doing a lot more with architects in terms of just essentially just reaching out and saying, hey, we're here. We're probably going to be one of the people that are building your designs. How can we work better together? And let's open up that communication really early on, because we all need to learn from each other at the end of the day. Otherwise, we're going to have misunderstandings throughout the projects, especially if there is no continuation, if they're not novated to us, and don't actually have a part in the later stages, then we don't want to make assumptions where we don't have to. Therefore, we always try and reach out where we can. But I think it's that communication along the whole process of the project. We want, at the end of the day, everyone that's been involved to turn up on handover and actually look at the project and go, this looks amazing, this is what I expected.
Yeah.
Whether there were site discrepancies that came up or not, we want the details to really show off a really amazing space.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting. Basically, everybody's got to act like a consultant or have that consultant bit to them, like you're doing from the build side. But then that kind of, if that's happening all across the stages, that you've got these overlaps and this continuity, so much is solved.
Yeah.
Or
doesn't
just
become an
mitigate
issue.
it.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's just not even there. It just stops it in its tracks, which is great. Kayleigh, I love that you've mentioned about the spot the difference. I think it's a bit of a catchphrase I'm going to be taking away. And that whole continuity piece, you've got the visuals and you've got the reality, you're acting as a consultant, but how do you manage the expectations when reality is actually so different to our initial concept vision?
It's a really tricky thing to inherit a project from an architect or a designer who's done the initial concept that is the most amazing visuals. They have sold the client, and I understand why it looks beautiful. But when we get on site and it's not quite like that, to then go back to the client and explain why that's not the case, it's a very difficult thing to do. Essentially, that pretty picture isn't quite so pretty. So something that we're trying to do when we do our own projects from stage zero, from concept, is any visualizations we do, we include the nitty-gritty pieces. We include all of the M&E in the ceilings, or any green release buttons that are on the wall and different things like that, to try and give the most true picture of what that space will become. I think it's something that we all need to really address, is that even if we don't have the understandings of some of the technical side, or we know there's regulations that need to be implemented, like release buttons, as much as we don't want them there, you need to use them. It's something we should include. We need to be as honest as possible with our clients about what they are getting. We're the professionals, we're the ones that have the knowledge on this. So I think it's about being more transparent across the board. We pull in these technical details that include all these elements for regulations, and if we're not showing them fully at concept stage, I understand that. But if we're just straight up lying in visuals, then it's never going to be a great outcome for the reaction for a client or what they've envisioned. So it's going to be, you're already kind of on the back foot.
It's tough for you because you're only breaking bad news.
Yeah, we end up feeling a little bit like the bad guys in that sense, but ultimately we are making spaces that not only look amazing, but they work well for the users. We build for the people that are using this space, and that means they need to be I need to function so that you're comfortable in the space. otherwise no one's going to use it. So we need to spot the difference, bring attention to all of those little pieces, and overall I think as an industry from the get-go we need to be a little bit more open about those pieces that are included at the end result. We should bring them in right near the start and say, this is actually what you're going to get.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We were actually on it's so similar, but we were on a project and a fabric had been specified for curtains, and we were obviously doing the design and the make and the install of the curtains. And in all the visuals, the face of the fabric was shown.
Yeah.
And it wasn't one of our fabrics because all our fabrics are double-sided, but the fabric that was specified had it wasn't double-sided.
Yeah.
The back wasn't as pretty. And so when the client came on, like after you done your job, they were really unhappy, and there was a lot of curtains.
Yeah.
And like, just from a managing expectations point of view is one thing, but secondly, sustainability and like the waste. And like, so that's why we always make sure samples are sent, and we try and point that out. But even then, sometimes,
it doesn't get carried through, does it?
It doesn't get carried through.
This is the issue. And I think even down to a lot of the time, we see this in the colours of fabrics have not been portrayed properly, or just colours in general. And also a lot of acoustic panels are portrayed as these seamless pieces across a 5-metre wall, for example. It's not the case. We need to bring that detail so that the client has a real understanding of, okay, so there is a joint line here. Actually, do you like that joint line, or shall we actually make it even stand out further and design it into the space so that we are looking at something a bit more detailed? Because in reality, it's not one large piece. So it's, as much as concept is concept, there needs to be a little bit more forward thinking into what the detail is. Otherwise, it's going to be me turning around and saying, it's not quite right. It's not actually in reality going to look like this. So I think our communication with any novated architects or designers that we have, that's what we do straight away. We sit down with the full team and we literally do a page turn and make sure that everything and anything is talked about, so that everyone's expectations are at the same level, and we can iron out any details that are like that sort of element straight away.
Is there any other materials or products that are commonly have a discrepancy between the visual and the reality?
I think paint colours is definitely one, but actually lighting is really something that I think we exaggerate a lot in our visuals, because if we actually, sometimes we show it as this lovely warm space, and actually you go and look at the spec and we've spec'd a complete white light, cool light, so instantly we sit there and go, it's not actually going to look the same. Or we've got kind of this soft glow over the whole space, and actually you've got directional lighting. So a lot of the time the lighting is a bit misleading in the visuals that are produced, because we want it to just look like a great image. At the end of the day, we want to look at a really satisfying image that's going to sell everyone on the project. And I think there needs to be a limit to artistic license in this. I mean, I've sat and created visuals where I've had directors turn to me and go, it's artistic license, you can do that. And well, at some point you're going to have a conflict, because it's not true. You can make it a little bit brighter or look a little bit wider angle, but it's not going to be true. So I think it's all down to the managing expectations. We can all stand in a space and try and understand it. And as designers, I think a lot of us kind of, because we can visualize it and we can go, that can be sitting there or have this much space, we need to recognize that not everyone can do that. And how we tell that story a lot of the time is through visuals. And they're trusting us to tell them a true story. If it's not, and at the end they go, well, that's not what you promised me, someone's not going to be happy. I think we just need to create beautiful images, beautiful visualizations, but still it needs to have that sense of reality.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's just actually popping into my head as you talk. I was on a project where the client said, still looking at the visuals and everything like that, and obviously we do with the curtains and blinds and light, and she said to the designer, can you put in the sunlight as well? Because all the visuals had this like lovely light streaming across, like Zara homey, kind of like casting these like dramatic shadows, and it was all absolutely gorgeous. And I agree, it did look bloody wicked.
Yeah.
But the client was like, is that coming too? But like she was like kind of joking because she knew it wasn't possible. Well, thankfully she did know, but it was just like, it's like it's not going to be quite like that.
It's so difficult because we can create, I mean, even AI, someone can type in, I want a mid-century modern living room, and computer generated, there's an image for you. And so much of our technology is so high end now that there's images out there that you wouldn't even know aren't real. So if we can create these amazing visualizations to sell the spaces that we want to create, it's very easy to go the next level. And I just think we need to make sure that we're being true to ourselves in these. At the end of the day, you've been hired to design this space. You're already doing this. Let's, again, bring the client along for the ride. Let them see how it's developed. Let them have a really deep understanding of why you've done that and why you've shown it in that manner. And rather than just showing an image, explain what the lighting's bringing to that image, and okay, the acoustic panels are done in this layout so that we mitigate this, or we can use a full panel so we're not contributing to waste for cut-offs. And there's so many different things that go into that image, and I think we don't, a lot of the time we go, oh look, there's this lovely sparkly image, and everyone goes wow, but no one actually has much of the understanding of what you've put into it. So it's really, the story doesn't just stop at what you visually see. We need to delve deeper into what is shown.
Yeah. So who are the most important people on a project?
Everyone. It's everyone on a project. If one thing, you're a team at the end of the day, whether that's your team in your own company or that's the team on the entire project. The amount of different parties that are involved in one project, whether you actually interact with them or not, everyone's contributed. And if the information isn't supplied correctly or there's a lack of communication overall, you'll very quickly see the knock-on effects that happen there. So, for example, just in Ambit side, we're a very close-knit team. We all actually love coming into the office or on site so that we can all learn off each other. The real thing is that we have an understanding of everyone's role, because I understand what commercials need from me and vice versa. Same with our project managers. Obviously, they've got to have an overview of the whole project and all of our roles either way. But if you're trying to work as an individual, at some point, something's going to be disjointed. So I think there's not really an answer to who's kind of the most important person in a project. It's we all need to actually work together. And again, it's having that transparency with each other and our client teams to really make sure that we get the best outcome within the time, and really understand goals that they might not even know that they have. So I think it's all about the communication overall, but everyone has to have a role in each project and they all kind of intersect.
Everyone is important. I do agree. That's a great answer. But are there common traits of a successful team, like a complete project team,
Yeah.
that you see coming through that, make a project work?
I think it's how everyone can collaborate together. We are all working towards one goal at the end of the day, and there shouldn't be any conflict within a full client project contractor team. We all want to have the same contributions and get to the goal that we all set. We all agreed on that. Overall, what we found is that in Ambit, our team that takes on the project from tender stage stays with it till the end. So we see, as soon as it comes in, we analyse it, obviously go through a full tender process, and ultimately take that project to handover. So your client relationship stays the same and just develops, because you've seen us. I'm the face you see at the beginning. I'm the face you see at the end. We've done this whole process together. So I think that is like a key factor that really means everyone's engaged and can openly come to whoever they need to, whether it's something that is just popped up on their mind and they want to see if it's possible, or if it's something that they've been told we need to achieve this now, can we get that into the project? So everything develops all the time. We're a lot of the time never actually start and end with the same exact brief. It develops as we take on a project. And actually largely that is probably down to us as well, because we bring things to the table. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is there ever a brief that you wouldn't take up? Like, is it ever, if there's not an alignment in the team, would you just say we're not doing this job?
I think that's a key part of having the fact that we do tender to handover, is that we can sit and analyse a project brief from the off, and everyone can put their kind of concerns or questions that they have for the client out straight away. By sitting round a table together and kind of, well, have you thought of this part? Or from my side, it wouldn't work. So do we need to actually query that further? If there is something that fundamentally doesn't work and a client's not open to discussing it, then that's something that we have to do our due diligence on and actually say, okay, I don't think we are the right people to work on this with you. However, most of our clients are very open to our expertise and our opinions on these matters, so that we can actually get anything that may initially have looked at it like, oh, I'm not sure about that. They didn't even think it was an issue. So it's actually us bringing that to the table. They're quite open to it. We could talk it through. And actually a lot of that's ironed out at tender stage, and they actually then build it into the tender. So we've had a few tenders that have come through and we've just part of our process is, have you considered this? Have you considered that? For example, they hadn't considered, for a tenant-ready space, they hadn't considered an option of having a comms room, which they're not the nicest spaces, but we need them for our tech to function. And we just, when we were asked to create a design for it, we actually incorporated it into the design without being asked to. And when we presented it, we said, these are the considerations we would suggest that you would actually incorporate into the spaces. That's from our own experience doing similar. And then when the second stage of the tender came out, that was part of the requirements, for example. So I think everyone's, again, it's questioning, doing a next set of questioning on what the initial brief is or what their goals are. That's what really, we are experts at what we do. So bringing our own background and knowledge should only make your project better.
Yeah.
And I think everyone in the industry needs to be more like that. I mean, I wouldn't claim to know everything about acoustic panels or curtains. I come to you guys and go, guys, we need to hit this, this, and this. What do you recommend?
What is this? What is the sheet size and where are the joints?
Yes, exactly.
Tell me. Yeah, no, that's great. What does a nightmare project handover look like?
I think for us, it would be pure lack of information that we get. The key issue that we're seeing a lot is we're receiving either spatially incorrect drawings or lack of information in O&M manuals. The issue with that is that's the baseline for the project. If we have incorrect information, we're going back to spot the difference and seeing we do all of our surveys and validations ahead of going on site to ensure what we need to know is correct or incorrect before moving forward. But ultimately, if you have all of the wrong information or lack of information in general, we're adding time, money onto a project. Nobody wants that. And it's mitigating that. So something I know we spoke about is O&Ms and how they can be better.
How can they be better?
Well, we've worked with a lot of clients on many different projects, and ultimately it's where do these O&Ms go once we hand over a project? Who's looking after them and handing over to the next person? Does anyone actually look at them? Like, obviously we request a lot of information from a lot of suppliers or subcontractors. Where does that go and how easily accessible is it? So what we're developing is looking at having a Matterport scan, a 3D scan of the space done at the end of every project. Essentially a bit like Google Street View, that you can walk around it. And the idea is that we're going to have different tags on different materials or different items within the space. So essentially you can walk around your space on your laptop and click on the carpet and it will tell you exactly where it's from and whether it's got a take back scheme, who the contact is.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so we can literally go into a Zoom room, click on the acoustic panel. Okay, that's Stanson's. Right, who are we contacting if we want to add more to our space, or if we're actually going to take it out, will they take it back and do something with it, and so on. So I think it's just really about the user experience of O&Ms. No one wants to look at O&Ms and scroll through a million folders.
That's such a good idea. Why didn't someone think of that before? I think it also comes into the, oh, my mind's spinning now, because I think it also comes into like the telling the story in a bit more of a interactive kind of sexy way than a QR code.
Yeah.
I know you say QR code, and no disrespect, but it's kind of getting a bit boring.
Yeah.
Whereas if you could kind of get a Matterport of a space before you go and visit it, and you see this glass actually, like maybe some photos even in the process was crashed down from the old windows and it's now a worktop, one example.
Yeah.
But great, like so much more intuitive.
Exactly. And it's making it easier for, at the end of the day, these people that are looking for this information can be anyone. It could be the office manager that actually they want to get an extra feature light but have no idea what that is. They're not going to get on a step ladder and try and find some sort of code on there. Let's make this as easy as possible for anyone to use, and we can add more information that is relevant for as we progress. Those items can be updated. If you've got links, we can add that in. If there's maintenance videos, for example, that can be added into it as well. It's just making it's a bit endless of what it could be, but it's the fact that you're looking for a certain thing. If you're going into an O&M, you're looking for something specific. So let's make it as easy as possible.
It's just like an interactive, intuitive building Bible.
Yeah, exactly. And
wow,
the issue is we are all visual. You can sit there and go, I need to know what that is for X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, I can literally sit in that space in the Matterport scan, and I know it's that. Whereas if you're trying to look for a title and you don't actually know what that is anyway, how are you going to find it?
Just go to the third floor, go to the conference room, click on the curtain. Like,
exactly.
It comes from Senses, they do a tape-based game, wicked. Exactly. And it's made out of like pre-loved wool, like cool. Like, it's just so simple. Well done.
That's the
idea. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is honestly a golden nugget. I can't wait for that to be everywhere.
Yeah, it's something that we're trying to develop it to make it a bit more like something that can become a standard. And these things do need standardizing because it will just make it so much more convenient for everyone to do across the board.
I think that's a selling point for a building.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's so much. I think it's massively sustainable as well, because someone might be able to repair something or a take back scheme. It goes back to this whole thing about inspiring people, not just making money, but like you might be able to buy a replacement part or another light instead of getting 3 new lights because one's broken. You can just get one. Exactly. Millions of the. My mind is just going all down. I mean, that's a great idea. Yeah, let us know when that's rolled out. That would be wicked to see it and definitely to be part of it. Actually, I would love to.
Well, we need everyone's input. Essentially, that's probably the hardest part of doing anything that's a little bit outside the box. Is everyone's feeding into this. So at the start, it is literally a tag and your files are there. Where it could go is kind of limitless.
Yeah.
So
no, brilliant. What is the construction always hasn't got a great name. These things do change it and give it a good name. So thank you. But what is the ugly side of construction that is still getting glossed over?
The ugly side from my personal point of view is that we are just looked at as builders. That's what we are. We build, we make things happen, we make them into reality. But I think a lot of people kind of downplay what we do on day to day. You think we can be creating spaces in such a short amount of time. Again, at the moment, still a lot of lack of information out there. And there's a lot of expectations on us. So I don't want it to continue in the way that, they'll just build it, it's fine. We're part of the process. We need to be, to make sure that what we create is what you're expecting. And that development needs to happen from the off. Like we've said, the communication between all of the parties involved in a construction project, which it is at the end of the day, that's what it is, it's a construction project, need to be open from the off. And actually, there's so many construction companies that are design and build, detail and build, or have the knowledge that intersects into other areas. So obviously we've got our in-house design, so we connect back to the designers or architects that may have worked previously on the projects, but it doesn't just stop at design. So we essentially have our own, like you were saying, it's in-house consultancy essentially, that we have our own specialisms within a construction company. So as a principal contractor, we're managing so many different aspects, upstream, downstream. So it's kind of having that overview. I think it's just everyone in the industry needs to have the same amount of respect across the board.
Do you think there's a level of disrespect?
I think we kind of shrug off what a lot of contractors do. Ultimately, I can turn around and be an electrician. I appreciate exactly what they do on site. And we obviously manage all of our subbies to do the best work they can do because they are the specialists in what they do. Same as how we react to architects. They have trained to do that. That is what they specialise in. We're just trying to bridge the gap between the person that's installing what you've asked on your drawings and what you're asking may not actually be possible. So by having all of our specialisms within our company, we get to kind of make that conversation happen a bit more fluidly. So yeah.
No, that's nice. That's a really that's really important consideration, I guess, for anyone and everyone, that we have got different roles to play. Of course we have, and we have got different skills and different talents, and hence we're in different stages of the process. But we've got to have a respect and a level of understanding of what the people before us and or after us are doing, because that is just a basic human right.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things that if you want something to be an exact way, then let's develop it. Let's all work together and develop it so they all work from the off. But like you say, it's really about your role doesn't stop in your role anymore. We need to have more understanding of what everyone does. And in doing that, we can be more open with each other. It's not you versus us. We're all working towards the same goal. We all want a happy client at the end of the day, and for people to enjoy the spaces that they're in.
Great answer. Thank you, Kayleigh. That's been so enlightening, hearing about like the ugly side of construction. Kind of sad that we got that problem at now, but fair enough, and we need to tackle it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
need to own it and tackle it.
It's a full industry piece that we just need to realise that it all works together.
Yeah.
We're all one industry.
Yeah, and finishing off on a positive note, like, what's your favourite project to date?
My favourite project currently is definitely something we're working on in Farringdon. We've touched on it already. Massive project. Our biggest project so far.
How big is massive?
It is, I think it's approximately 25 million. Redevelopment of a Victorian property.
Wow.
It's actually 4 buildings that we've actually knocked through into one. So we're working on that with Bentle Green Oak as the client. Amazing client, amazing piece to work on.
Mm-hmm.
It's been in development for a few years now. And again, we've collaborated with a lot of different people on this, including Fathom Architects and Vettel. So it's been a real journey for it. It's shell and core, it's Cat A, it's tenant ready space.
Oh, wow.
We've added in 2 new floors onto the building as well. So it's a real nitty gritty one.
Yeah.
And now we're finally actually seeing the final finishes going in, which includes the recycled glass that's going in as the worktops. And realistically, the thing about this one that I really love is that we're exposing all the original architecture. So all of the original brick walls are all going to remain raw and exposed. And then bringing in soft finishes like some of your Stanton's curtains into the spaces, and really just kind of like playing on its heritage. But yeah, it's going to be called the Waterman, and it's going to have brand new reception space, which is going to be known as Alfred's Club, kind of touching on the Victorian side.
Yeah, no.
Completely new terraces for every floor that we've cut into the existing building. And then we've got Cat A spaces and then a tenant ready space so that everyone can kind of experience it without having to fit out a floor themselves. So that will be ready for a tenant to take on if they want, or they can understand what other floors could look like, which I think is a really nice way that we can kind of give a sense, like a real sense, outside of visuals for people that can't quite understand spatial impact. And that will again just help our letting agent side to really sell the space.
Yeah, it's definitely the best visual, isn't it? A prototype space or tenant ready. Yeah, no, I get it. And who did you say the client was?
Bentle Green Oak.
And what do they do?
So they are a property investment company. So they've worked across globally, and we work a lot with them on a lot of their UK projects. We've worked also on 7 Bishopsgate with them.
Oh, no.
Where essentially, as tenants have moved out, we've worked with them on a lot of tenant ready spaces that have been snapped up very quickly, which is always great.
That's a nice thing to, nice feather in your cap.
Yeah, exactly. But it's really, for us, working with them, they really love to develop the language of a building. So it's touching on what that history of the building was, or any key architectural details, and we really play on that in the designs that we develop for them.
No, that's nice. And when did you say that project was finishing?
So
opening?
It's finishing summer this year. So yeah, there'll be lots of images coming out.
Keep your eyes out for the Waterman.
Yes.
And hopefully there'll be a metaphor on it.
Exactly, definitely.
We're demanding it. No, that's great. Thank you so much, Kayleigh.
Nice.
Thank you for joining us on Space by Stanson's podcast. We really appreciate all of our listeners and all of our followers. So please do hit follow. Please do rate the show. We're relatively new, but the feedback's been amazing from everyone, and we are really grateful just to highlight and show like challenges or great innovations from key influencers in the workspace. And Kayleigh, you've been amazing showing us like a kind of behind the scenes, not so pretty look, but a really honest look.
It's reality, isn't it?
Yeah, it's honest.
We're building it, we're making it happen. So
yeah, and when I say not so pretty, I don't mean it negatively. It's just like that raw, like honesty.
Yeah, definitely.
And so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hit follow, hit rate, and we'll see you again. Thank you, Kayleigh. Thank you very much for listening. I'm also very grateful to all our guests. If you've enjoyed it, please do leave us a rating and a follow. or if you know who else would like to join the podcast. Share the names, we're always open to hearing. Until next time, keep happy, keep healthy, and take care.